Hello, everyone. My name is Travis Shinglebecker, and I'm a senior director at Aperio Philanthropy. Aperio is a nonprofit consulting firm with a vision for a world in which everyone can thrive. We exist to unleash the power of communities to drive change by dramatically expanding resources for nonprofits. Day to day, we work alongside community leaders and fundraisers to develop simpler, faster, and smarter ways to generate the revenue for nonprofit missions. Our client services provide strategic advisory, hands-on support, and embedded fundraisers to organizations nationwide. As a firm created to drive change, we are thrilled to be hosting this event series with New York University. For the past several years, we have been facilitating conversations among thought leaders about the role of philanthropy in driving change and solving complex societal challenges. Today's event is a continuation of our series on expanding your donor community, where we'll be focusing in on engaging women in philanthropy. It is now my pleasure to introduce our co-host, Michelle D'Amico.
Thank you, Travis. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle D'Amico. I'm the Director of Continuing Education and Public Programs at the NYU SPS Center for Global Affairs, or CGA. Before I turn this over to our impressive speakers, I'd like to tell you a little bit about us. Since its founding, the Center for Global Affairs has had a goal to prepare global citizens to make a positive impact in the world. We do this through a variety of activities, including our two graduate programs, one in global affairs and another MS in global security, conflict, and cybercrime. We also offer a wide variety of skills and knowledge-based continuing education courses and offer public events such as this that expand upon the topics covered in our classrooms. We are very proud to be home to the George H. Heyman Jr. Program for Fundraising and Philanthropy. Through our open enrollment courses, on-site intensives, and certificate in fundraising, we offer professionally oriented educational options for those looking to enter or grow within the fundraising field. Courses are taught by practitioner faculty who bring their vast experience, expertise, and networks to the classroom. We'll send out additional information about our programs following today's conversation, so please feel free to reach out with any questions you may have. And now I'm delighted to introduce today's moderator, Tia Hodges. Tia is the president and CEO of the MetLife Foundation, where she directs the global strategic allocation of nearly 40 million in grants and impact investments that unlock socioeconomic mobility for all. She has dedicated nearly 20 years to creating and implementing strategies that drive systematic change at the intersection of philanthropy, nonprofit, and social impact sectors to improve economic and social progress in communities across the US. She joined the MetLife Foundation in July 2021 to lead the strategic evolution and grant-making efforts serving individuals and communities in more than 37 countries around the world. We're thrilled to have Tia and our impressive panelists here with us today. And now, without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to her for today's discussion.
Thank you so much, Travis and Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to participate. Just a few comments I'm going to provide as part of our discussion today. In today's landscape, as many of you probably know, many nonprofits are focusing on revenue diversification, which helps build organizational resiliency through uncertainty and creates opportunity for growth. Women increasingly drive decision-making in philanthropy, a trend that is only expected to accelerate as the wealth transfers between generations. Studies have shown that women give and engage differently, meaning that building and sustaining a donor community looks differently than it did in the past. While change can be challenging, organizations that are shifting their donor engagement model to better reach, learn about, and deepen relationships with women donors have seen tremendous new revenue growth and opportunities for impact. I'm really excited to share that in this session, we're going to explore a couple of things. First, trends in women's role in philanthropy. Second, how women give and engage differently and what that means for how we fundraise. Strategies for growing revenue through more effective engagement of women donors, and how to avoid some common mistakes. We have an outstanding panel, and I'm going to briefly introduce them. Their work certainly speaks for us, but there will be an opportunity for them to dive deeper into their work. Marie DaCosta is the Executive Vice President, Philanthropic Partnerships at the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, where she leads a multidisciplinary team, strategies, cross-sector partnerships, and ensuring the foundation's programs and initiatives are aligned with its mission. Next, we have Dr. Canny Graham. Dr. Graham is the founder and principal of Spark Women's Philanthropy, a firm dedicated to empowering the engagement and philanthropy of women. We have Diane Lepson, who serves as the CEO and co-founder of Evergreen Philanthropic Solutions, a national consultancy that helps nonprofit organizations, individuals, corporations, and foundations achieve their philanthropic goals. And Shauna Thomas is a gender justice advocate, organizer, and co-founder of Ultraviolet, which is the largest online campaigning organization in the U.S., which she's led for 13 years as executive directors. So welcome to our panelists who have a lot of knowledge, information to share about today's really important topic. To get us kicked off, I want to help to set the stage, or ask our panelists rather to help set the stage. So a question I'm going to put out to all of you is, and to get us started, share with us through your particular lens that you're bringing to this conversation. What are you seeing? Or what is, share with the audience your vantage point from your particular lens in terms of what you're seeing in the sector today.
Thank you, Tia. I'll start it off. It's a pleasure to be part of this conversation. At Silicon Valley Community Foundation, or SVCF, I lead our philanthropic partnerships team, the group that helps donors, families, and corporations align their generosity with systems change. And the lens I'm bringing today is shaped by what we're seeing on the ground. Women are not just participating in philanthropy, they're redefining it. They're moving from transactional giving to transformational partnerships that drive long-term impact. And so what the research shows is that women are increasingly directing the flow of capital and influence. So the challenge and opportunity is to design engagement models that match how women give, relationally, collaboratively, and with a deep sense of purpose. And I can go on, so just let me know.
Happy to
I'll jump in.
I would like to jump in next. Thanks, Diane.
I can jump in.
Dr. Canny, yes.
All right. So I bring my lenses through that of higher education and also some nonprofit work. I work in higher education and have a consulting company as well. And my lens that I talk about a lot with my donors and those that I work with is seeing the unseen. So my work sits at the intersection of women's and inclusive philanthropy and creating spaces where those that have historically been overlooked as donors are invited in and heard and celebrated. For me, seeing the unseen means shifting from transactional to transformational. And so the givers, the leaders, and the stories, they've been there all along. We're just trying to build a more inclusive and powerful culture of philanthropy. And as we know, the potential has always been there. These communities are just waiting to be invited to the table.
I can go next. So one of the I come with the lens of having led the women's giving programs for both United Way and the American Red Cross. And I've been in this space since the 1990s. And what I have seen is a generational shift. So when I was first involved in the 1990s, there were a lot of women who had time to really engage in the work of the organizations. Right now, as a lot of that leadership is shifting from the baby boomers to the Gen Xers to the millennials and Gen Zs, there's less time because many of us are being stretched with caregiving for our parents and also then caregiving for children. And there's less time that's available that women have to devote to causes. So we're seeing a lot of the nonprofits who have been in this space for a long time, who've been used to having women engaged in volunteering. Now women don't have as much time to devote to those causes, but they have money. And so a lot of nonprofits are starting to figure out, well, how do I engage women in a meaningful way, given that they just don't have as much time as they used to?
Okay, I'll jump in. This is, again, my name is Shauna. It is a pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be included with this group. As Tia previewed in the introductions, I'm coming here as someone who has been kind of raising money for and with women nearly exclusively, really, to advance gender justice for the last 13 years. I think now maybe it goes without saying, we're living through a historically significant moment, to put it lightly, and donors are responding in pretty different ways across race, gender, class. What stands out to me is how women keep showing up again, right? Despite the uncertainty and inequity, it tracks with history, right? Women have always carried this country forward in one way or another, often without credit, and despite how we're treated really systemically. I think progressive and philanthropic women tend to value collective empowerment, and that our time, our talent, our resources can solve the world's biggest problems. So I think the future of philanthropy really is inseparable from the future of democracy. And despite kind of all the patriarchal noise around us, women are really driving what's next.
Thank you. That was really appreciated the lens that each of you shared, and from transactional to transformational, generational shifts, and collective empowerment are certainly themes that are bubbling up already. I want to start with Marie, if I may. Big picture. When you think big picture, why does women's philanthropy matter, and why in particular should nonprofits be paying attention?
Well, I think it absolutely matters, and some of it I'll just share some data points in a second, and it's kind of a rhetorical question as to why it should matter to nonprofits once you hear the numbers. But when we talk about women's philanthropy, we're talking about a shift in mindset, one that values connection, transparency, and collaboration that you just mentioned, Tia. Women often take what I call the long view. They're not simply making gifts, they're building momentum for systems change. It's so important given everything that's happening today. And I appreciate what Shauna said also, because women do lean into things that they see need support. So instead of shying away from it, they're leaning into it and they're investing in it. So at SVCF, I see this every day. Many of the women with whom I work choose a single focus area, like, say, climate resilience, early childhood education, or economic mobility, and they stay with it. They go deep. They invest in research, partnerships, and advocacy. They measure what works and adapt over time. That's the essence of strategic philanthropy, and women are leading it. So some of the figures I mentioned before, the data points, some of the projected figures that include estimates about the great wealth transfer we've all been hearing about, with women set to inherit approximately 70% of $124 trillion over the next 25 years. So we should just sit with these numbers for a second. So why should nonprofits pay attention? I mean, are they going to be around if they don't pay attention? That's really the takeaway from this. The data points speak for themselves, including that as of 2025, women control approximately 32% of global wealth. And this segment is growing faster than men's, projected to increase to around 40% by the end of this year, while the US share could reach nearly 40% by 2030. And in the US, women control over $10 trillion in household financial assets. And that's going to triple by 2030 from what research shows. So from a broader view, it's a moment of strength in the philanthropic sector. Giving USA 2025, which is kind of the Bible of data for the nonprofit sector, reports that total giving in 24 reached $592.5 billion. That's up 6.3% from the previous year, and for the first time in 3 years, outpacing inflation. So individual giving, which makes up roughly 2/3 of all donations, rose by more than 8%. Foundation and corporate giving also grew, particularly as markets stabilized. So we're operating in a growing landscape, and women are central to that growth, both as donors and as decision makers in family foundations, corporations, and collaboratives.
Those numbers are quite staggering, interesting, dynamic, and I think you really painted a great picture in terms of why nonprofits really need to be paying attention. The numbers definitely speak for themselves. Cami, I want to bring you in here. Your approach centers on 6 principles. Would love for you to walk our audience through those.
Sure, thank you. So I have been trained in and also am continuing the research of Kathleen Lair's 6 principles from her book and her work, Gender Matters. And this book and her work reminds us that generosity grows when we build trust, listen deeply, and then connect people to impact, as many of the women have already said on this panel, in ways that honor their values. And so I have also been looking at the principles and how they will work with other underrepresented groups at my university and at some other universities I consult with. And so the principles, there are 6 of them, and I'll just briefly go through each one of them so you have a sense of what they are. But the first principle is pause before you reset. And this speaks to looking at not rushing tactical change. First, takes a moment, pause to understand how women approach philanthropy. Models that force a reset without reflection will often fail because we're not hearing what they want. And this extends to other communities, our African-American, LGBTQ communities as well. So we need to listen first and pause before we reset the whole philanthropic landscape in our organizations. The second is seek women's input. That is one of the most important things I do when I work with folks, and I work at my own university. I ask women what motivates them. I cannot make sense about what works and what doesn't work. And so talk directly with them through focus groups about their interests, their motivations, their goals, and get their feedback. And it often reveals new pathways that we had never even considered. And I think that's a case-by-case basis within organizations, you know. The third principle is women bring more than money. We are more than just a wallet. We bring our time, our talent, our treasure, our ties, our testimony, and then 2 of the newer words with there were 5 T's, there are now 7 T's, are trust and transparency. And that is critical when you start talking about women's and inclusive philanthropy. We want to contribute in multiple ways as women, not just with our dollars. And we want to be tapped into. We want to tell our stories. We want to lead. So those are all so important. And then adding those 2 final T's, the trust and transparency, comes back to building that trust through all of those things and being transparent about where they're investing, how they're investing, those sorts of things. The fourth principle is leadership must be involved. Senior buy-in is absolutely essential for a paradigm shift. Gold standard philanthropy in this country works. It does raise money, but when we bring other people to the table, we shift culture and strategy, and your senior leadership must be fully engaged. It cannot just be an isolated women's philanthropy project like, oh, great, you've done it, check. There needs to be a shift with everyone you work with, from your AIS, your advancement information systems, prospect research, how portfolios are built, then to your marketing, your storytelling, all those things have to shift. So that comes from the top down. The fifth principle is start somewhere. Like, don't get analysis paralysis in the data, don't overthink it, don't sit and sweat for a few years, launch a pilot. See if it works, right? And then expand. Progress over perfection is often what I tell my clients. You don't need a big start. I mean, it's great if you can and you can get a big splash, but pick a focus area, whether that's an annual fund, a specific project, and success will grow broader, and you'll see big growth. And then the last principle is it's evolutionary work. This is a long-term transformation, not a one-off program that will change it all. It's not a campaign. It's a gradual, profound change in culture and practice over time. So stick with it, keep learning from it and adjusting and adapting, and I guarantee you will find success in a women's or inclusive philanthropy program.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing those 6 principles. So when we think about the significant wealth transfer that's about to happen, how women are going to be at the forefront, match that or overlay that with the 6 principles. Diane, I'm just really curious from your standpoint. You've worked in women's philanthropy for much of your career, a lot of expertise there in working with nonprofits, foundations, etc. Tell us about how this field has evolved and what you're seeing.
So thanks for that, Tia. And I really want to build upon what Canny was saying, because those principles that she had articulated, that Kathleen had articulated in Gender Matters, is really core to the women's programs that I had led. So I want to share the case study of United Way. So back in the 1990s, where women were starting to really get involved in building the Women's Leadership Council, now Women United, women were really clamoring for a seat at the table. And the leadership at that point thought, well, goodness, well, let them go have a shopping party, let them throw their galas. And that's women's philanthropy. Women were clamoring for a seat at the table. They didn't have power to make decisions. Women were very underrepresented on the board and didn't match the population. So once we started to really track how much money women were donating to United Ways across the country, when it became $100 million a year, that was something really hard for the leadership to ignore. So, of course, spaces open up. Women had a seat at the table and had voice in terms of decision making for nonprofits, et cetera. Fast forward, 20, 30 years, women do have those seats. I'm not saying that those seats are something that we take for granted. We're holding them right now. And I'm sure Shauna can really attest to the work in her space. Some of that space is being threatened right now just by some of the dynamics that are happening across our country. So I don't want to say that, we're taking those spaces for granted. Well, what I'm finding women are really looking for is beyond the seat at the table. They're really looking for meaning in their philanthropy. They're looking for that purpose. They're looking for ways to share their values, their legacy with their family members. And so it's more than, hey, we want a seat. It's help me live my life in a purpose-filled way.
Thank you. With that, with Diane's insights, I think we've completed a great big picture. If I were to say a 30,000-foot level, big picture in terms of what the field, the sector is looking like. Now I want to dig a little bit deeper and speak practically. Shauna, for you have founded an organization focused on gender justice and engage women philanthropists to fuel your work. Please tell the audience, tell us what you've learned and what advice do you have for others who are in your shoes?
Sure. So Ultraviolet was fueled almost entirely by women. About 90% of our donors, funders, foundation partners were women. Although I am proud to say about 25% of our membership was men or gender nonconforming people. But anyway, that's not surprising given our mission, right? Women have skin in the game. I would argue men do too, of course. We all have something to gain from advancing feminist values, but it's really women who are most likely, right, to show up for the purpose of shifting power and culture in the way that we were doing that. My biggest lesson, and this tracks with what a lot of the panelists have said and what Dr. Graham was saying in the opening, which is that successful fundraising with women is, fundamentally relational, right? It's not as transactional. Women donors aren't sort of looking as much to control the outcomes; they're looking for partnership, right? So the best conversations aren't pitches; they're collaborations. The offer isn't just give money; it's bring your skills, bring your ideas, bring your relationships. That does take time; it takes intention, but it also creates really durable relationships that will sustain itself, can sustain, I should say, through setbacks. So when campaigns fail, not all of your work is going to be 100% all the time, right? This is inevitable, whether oftentimes even just because of things outside of your control. But when you've built real trust, right, with your donors, with the women who you've brought into the community, they're going to stay with you in the fight. So I think that's generally what I would say. I would offer one sort of practical metric that helped me stay centered and tracking whether or not I was doing it right, which is that if I was spending more than 10% of my time replacing donors instead of cultivating the ones I already have and looking at it, am I replacing 10% of my current donors with new ones? I know I'm doing it wrong, right? The real growth is coming from deepening and expanding existing relationships. A little bit like dating. If you're constantly looking for someone new, you're probably neglecting the person who already said yes. So lastly, I just want to offer that I really don't think you need to overcomplicate this, or you don't need big events, glossy reports, big offsite retreats. You do need authentic connections. So that's about showing up as a human, asking as much as you're telling, right? Giving people a lot of ways to contribute beyond money, including money, but beyond money.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I really loved how you said from not pitches, but collaboration and authentic connections, which I think has resonated through all of the comments. But Candy, I want to ask you because Giving Circles is, it's real. A lot of people engage. And as you specialize in inclusive giving circles, including for women, walk us through what effective giving circles look like and how to best develop them.
Sure. I mean, I could talk an entire webinar on this, so I'm just going to hit a couple of high points and then, reach out to me later if people have questions. But I think the first most important thing for me and working with Giving Circles is community first, philanthropy second. Giving Circles start with shared values and trust, not just money. It's about belonging, people coming together because they want to learn and connect and make a difference together. So that rising tide lifts all boats. And I can speak for James Madison University, where I have started something called Women for Madison, began not with a campaign, but with a community. And we saw like a 300% engagement over time just by creating events and bringing women together. Because they wanted to connect and learn around their alma mater and make a difference together. And we hadn't been asking women systematically. So the giving has followed naturally once those relationships and shared purpose came together. The second point I just want to raise about Giving Circles is it's inclusive by design. So effective circles reflect the communities that they serve. And so whether I've done it in a nonprofit, in a hospital, or at my university, that means welcoming diverse voices across age, race, identity, experience, class years, majors, you name it. The diversity and the richness matters. And that's where we can create spaces where everyone feels that they have something meaningful to contribute. And both Women for Madison and then we did create something called the Amethyst Circle about 4 years in. There's a very specific giving society to raise money for scholarships for underrepresented Pell eligible students. That was the thing that we came around, and we really wanted all the women in our group to feel that philanthropy wasn't just for a select few, that every woman, whether their gift was 100 or 1,000,000, they were there to make impact. So all of the money, again, if it's a $100 donation, if it's $2,500 a year, which is what our Amethyst Circle membership is, every gift matters in this, and you can show up to anything we have, and it just, again, there's a sense of community. Another point just quickly is education and engagement, equal empowerment. So strong giving circles combine learning and action. They don't just write checks. They want to know about the issues, so they explore the issues that we have at our university. They want to hear from our deans, our presidents, the people that are helping make those decisions and make informed, collaborative decisions about their impact. And so, again, they don't write checks. They don't just write checks. They engage deeply with our scholarship recipients. They learn about their student experiences, and they see their collective impact and action. And I think that is critical to keep these women continuing donating through their experiences. And it's shared leadership and voice as well. So we distribute the decision-making. It's not top-down. I have a very active volunteer board, and they thrive when they're shaping priorities. Impact 100 works so well because that's around grant making. It's a national program you might all have heard of. And engagement, of course. Again, I'll just say it again and again. My women love to come together. We have the best time and the best events, and they're so invested, and they always say it fills my cup. Every time I come here, it fills my cup. and I want to give. And the last thing is we spend a ton of time, and I also recommend this in my consultancy, celebrate the impact and celebrate the connection, because yes, we want to recognize the joy of giving, but we want to unveil new scholarship recipients. We want to celebrate our milestones. We want to remind these women that giving is not just about generosity. It's about belonging, storytelling, and transforming other people's lives. And in the last 3 years, we've raised about $3 million, and that's an annual giving society. I'm now working with our Black alumni at JMU to create a much larger initiative around the same principles to raise money for student scholarships as well. So it works.
It does. Thank you. And
Sure.
I want to bring, based on what you said, Kenny, I want to bring Diane in to this part of the conversation in particular, because Diane, you've led two of the most successful giving circles in the country. What would you add to Kenny's advice? And also, what do you recommend for fundraisers to keep in mind as they engage women?
So I want to lift up something that Shauna said,
Sure.
which was ask, don't assume. One of my mentors in this space was Dr. Janetta Cole, who was the chair of United Way Worldwide's board at the time. And she had this great saying, you know one woman, you know one woman. So we're talking a lot about general trends. This is what's happening. But we as women want to be seen as individuals for what we can do. So what I'd say to our fundraising colleagues who are listening today is don't assume, ask questions. So if you're engaging with a female philanthropist, maybe you don't have a specific ask and say, I'd like you to share this, or I'd like you to make this amount of gift. Rather, come at it a little bit more holistically and say, I've laid out for you the vision for what our organization is doing. How do you see yourself supporting this? And let the woman tell you how she will engage. As Kenny had said, there are 7 T's that are out there. She can say what's available for her, because in my experience in working with women, our visions may be very small as to what we think that they're capable of doing. But when you throw the question out more broadly, we are surprised and amazed, because it's so much more than we even dreamed possible.
And I'm curious also to you or to the group as well. Are there any common mistakes that our fundraisers out there can and should avoid at all? Any additional thoughts on that?
I think what is particularly important is building relationships with women and understanding who they are before making an ask. A lot of times fundraisers will go in for that meeting and sell, sell, sell. What's really important is to take a step back, invest in discovery, invest in curiosity, understand what is motivating this person who you're sitting across the table from to engage with you. Again, it's to underscore that you know one woman, you know one woman. And in order to make the most successful appeals to her, it's really important to understand her why and how her why connects to your mission.
Fantastic. I'm going to ask a couple more questions. So in the interim, if you have questions, please put them in the chat for our Q&A. But before we get to Q&A, Marie, interconnections. What are the interconnections between women's philanthropy and family philanthropy? I just think this is such an interesting question. If you could connect those dots, and how do you recommend nonprofits approach those dynamics?
I can't tell you how much I appreciate this question, Tia. It is so interconnected. It's at the core of how we move the needle and look forwards towards the future. Simply put, women's and family philanthropy are deeply connected. In most families, women are the stewards of philanthropic values. They're the ones who translate generosity into tradition. At SVCF, we see women leading family giving conversations, especially around purpose and legacy. They're thinking about how the next generation will give, not just how much. And they're building structures that keep that spirit alive. A big part of that story is the rise of donor-advised funds, or DAFs. There are now nearly 2 million DAF accounts nationwide, holding about $229 billion, nearly a quarter of all individual giving. DAFs make it easier for families to plan, collaborate, and engage their children and grandchildren in philanthropy, oftentimes without the administrative burden of a family foundation, and other times at a lower threshold, in a sense, democratizing philanthropy. So DAFs are not the end all, but it is definitely an instrument that people are using to be able to add the next generation as their successor advisors or current advisors to join them in that learning journey to know where they should be granting out the funds that they have given generously to an institution. And so for nonprofits, this means engagement has to be multidimensional. When you're working with a family, you have to recognize that the donor might be a family system, not a single person. Women often play the connective role, linking generations, balancing priorities, and also ensuring the giving reflects shared values. So the most effective organizations that I've been associated with approach family philanthropy relationally. They offer opportunities for shared learning, intergenerational conversations, and transparency about impact. They invite women into strategic discussions, not just recognition events. I mean, we're not out there to put, and no shade on institutions that still have women selected to find the flowers for the center table for their event. That's fine. Bravo. We do need volunteers, and they do make sure that the place looks beautiful. But women who want their families involved often want to go deeper than just recognition events. And that's how family giving becomes a vehicle for continuity, not just contribution. Women today want to see themselves reflected in the work. They want clear communication about impact, but also authenticity about challenges. And I think storytelling is what we need for communications purposes, but it matters, as does evidence. Women donors want both heart and rigor. So no longer the backseat. We want to be driving this vehicle. And most importantly, I think they value partnership. The organizations that build deep, enduring relationships with women donors are those that make them collaborators in problem solving, not just funders. And at SVCF, at the current organization where I am, we've seen this play out in how women donors help design initiatives, advise on impact metrics, or even co-convene peer learning groups. When they're invited into that level of participation, engagement and retention soar. I think also women donors naturally see intersections when you're talking about family dynamics. They understand how education connects to housing, how economic mobility links to climate resilience. They bring a holistic view to philanthropy that's incredibly powerful for systems change. Just a couple of weeks ago at SVCF, we had a donor site visit at an early childhood education center that also was embedded with climate resilience efforts, with trees that provide shade, so that they have this outside playground areas that are safe and comfortable, and you can extend the learning experience from the inside of the schoolroom into the outside. And so that's the interconnectivity that we can make sure that women see through these donor education journeys that they go on, and they appreciate it. I mean, I think we had probably 80% women attend to that donor site visit. So that says a lot. They see the intersections. It's just natural, and leadership has to have representation. So we need women to be given the opportunities to lead and showcase the solutions that they feel can help with all of the different issues that we have. And we see at SVCF how women's leadership across sectors, from corporate philanthropy to grassroots networks, that drives collaboration and innovation. Women are asking not just how can I give, but how can I change the conditions that make giving necessary? So I think the panel can weigh in on this, but in my opinion, women donors, at least at SVCF, they expect accountability, not in a punitive sense. They just want to see learning. They want to see evolution. They understand that progress is iterative. And that means impact reporting should move beyond metrics to include stories of growth, adaptation, and even failure. At SVCF, we try to share updates that are conversational, what we learned, how we pivoted, and where partners can plug in. So for women, from what I've seen, and I've been in the nonprofit sector for a little over 31 years, measurement for women donors is part of the relationship. It's how you build trust over time. And to what the other panelists have talked about, it's not only do they want to be heard, they want to be respected. And the ask is so important because you need to make sure you build that trust before you get to the ask. And I think that's what Dr. Graham was talking about, and Diane and Shauna have also shared on the panel.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Heart and rigor is at the center of your comments. Very quickly, I want to close out with Shauna to bring us home before we get to Q&A. And so what role do you see for women donors in creating change in this moment? And I think you alluded to why now is the time to get serious about focusing on women, but what role do you see donors playing?
Sure.
In this moment?
Sure. Well, I will acknowledge, like, we heard very compelling data, right, about women's growing economic power, their role in giving and decision making in this conversation. I agree, it speaks for itself. I will add kind of a small d democratic perspective, which I'm going to assume democracy, I mean, is a sort of shared value for people on this call. And I just, want to name, there's no functioning democracy, right? There's no such thing as a healthy society without gender and racial equity and economic security. And we're watching all of that erode faster than anyone planned for. And women are seeing it and they don't like it. That's not conjecture. That's the data. So what we also know, though, is that women can't fix this alone. And we also can't survive this moment without women leading. So I'm very conscious of contrast right now. You look at people like billionaires like Bezos, Gates, Peter Thiel. These men are aligning their business interests and consolidating power versus a Melinda Gates and a Mackenzie Scott who are redistributing it to defend democracy, to build equity. That's kind of the story of our time, right? So, but money alone, as many of us have talked about, is not exclusively going to save us. We're in a bit of an asymmetric, right, scenario right now, and we do need women and men investing power, not just wealth. We really need everyone thinking about what they can give, what they can share, how they can partner across gender, race, class to really fund a joint kind of majoritarian vision for the future. And when we spotlight women, we can't let men opt out, right? Women showing up doesn't mean it's their job now, right? We can multitask, but we can't fix democracy and let the guys dip out. So I think the work ahead really requires shared power and shared responsibility, and creating more space for women to be at the table.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to take us to Q&A. If you have any additional questions, please do put it in the chat. But we do have a couple of questions queued up. And the first question is, we know women give and engage differently. Can you share a specific example of how your organization has adapted its fundraising approach to reflect this? To anyone on the call, to any of our panelists who want to provide insight on that.
I'm happy to start the conversation. So I think it's important for organizations, if they are serious about engaging women, to dedicate staff time and resources towards that effort. Women will invest where they see that they're really being listened to and that an organization is serious about its commitment. So when I think about my time with both United Way and the Red Cross, There were staff who were entirely dedicated towards the Women's Philanthropy program. We had budgets that were associated with that as well. I understood that that may not be completely feasible for smaller organizations, but there needs to be an articulation by the organization that women matter as a core constituency of the organization, and that there are resources somehow deployed to engage women effectively.
Thank you. Anyone else want to quickly chime in on that question?
For like just a couple quick things.
Yes.
I think part of this is like, there's training, right? There's modeling, there's things that you can put into place, like donor engagement guides, right? Key questions you're going to ask everybody who you're sitting down with, and a plan for how to respond, or lots of options, right? For things that people can do or give that the organization needs, or that, and obviously some new things could come up as part of the conversation. That's part of asking. But like building that into your process. Things like establishing story of self is a really, I think, valuable way for establishing authentic relationships. What is yours? Why are you coming to the table, and asking them theirs? And then I think agreeing, kind of on what you're communicating on the growth front. This came up earlier in the conversation. Everyone feels good and confident about the wins. What didn't work, modeling, that it is safe to talk about what is not only safe, but it's desirable to talk about what didn't work, and establishing that, embracing what you learned from your failures is sort of not just fair game, but like an important way to build trust. I think you can kind of do all of those things, not just through training, but also in the materials that your folks are using in their fundraising.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I add something real quickly?
Yes, go ahead, Candy.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'll say one of the things that we did that really helped, and it goes back to both of your points, particularly that you can't do it alone. You just can't be a one-off program. We mobilized our women who were early donors and early engagers as peer-to-peer fundraisers, and we trained them and we taught them. And so that was that's one of the T's, is ties. That's their networks. And women are often not seen in the data and prospect management. We don't show up in wealth profiles as much. And neither do some of our other inclusive donors. And so to get those networks moving and motivated has been very successful for us, and a big change of the way that we do business, if you will. And so having them go out and bring their friends in and ask them to give gifts has changed the landscape.
And I'll just quickly add one tiny little suggestion for other nonprofits out there. Don't let this be a one and done effort. Sometimes you get out of the gate and you don't have the success that you thought you were going to have. Don't just shut the door and go to the next shiny object. And we tend to do this a lot, because some of us are very metrics driven, and we're like, my gosh, I got 5 people through the door. I was expecting 45, or I was expecting 200, whatever it is. But if it's a smaller donor salon or donor informational session, just try it again, because it's just that maybe the timing didn't work for the donors you were targeting. Maybe they had something else on their calendar. Try it again. Do the follow-up. The other big thing is the follow-up. We are so stretched as people, staff people at nonprofits. We're doing a multitude of things, and the follow-up sometimes just falls through the wayside. We just don't do it. And I'm guilty of it, and as much as anybody else. Enter it into your system of record, your CRM, whatever it is, the connections you made or didn't make, who attended, who didn't attend, did they say why? All those things are really important as you strategize for what you could do differently for the next time. But don't let it be a one and done event or effort, because I think a lot of times you will have success that next time around. Oftentimes you can follow up the one that you didn't get a lot of people through a newsletter article about what that nonprofit does or what else is happening, and people will sign up and sign on and join you on that journey. Just stay the course.
Thank you. I want to go to, I want to pivot a little bit. We have a question around giving circles. So how long should giving circles last, and how many sessions work to get to the final time of giving? So our audience is definitely keen to learn more about giving circles.
I can start, and I'll just start by saying, the organization, I would start with listening to the women, to the donors that you're working with. at my university, our giving circle is ongoing. It's an annual contribution towards a larger goal of $1 million in scholarships every 2 years. And so that has just been ongoing now. We're in our 5th year. Impact 100s tend to be a 1 year, and they do a couple of meetings, and then they decide as a grant making body what they want to, who they choose and what they want to pay out. And so I think it really just depends on your organization. I think it depends on the infrastructure and the amount of people you have there to also run that. So I think there's a lot of factors that institutionally, organizationally, that you have to consider when you consider a women's giving circle and what you can manage.
Thank you.
I think
Diane?
it also goes to the notion of asking the women themselves, how long should they last and how many sessions are needed? Because the women themselves are investing their time in this, and they're the best stewards of their time. And people help, they support what they help create. So ask them. They'll be honest. They've got a lot of wisdom. They have experience in this as well. Ask them, and then I'd move forward with what they have to offer.
Thank you. Incredibly sage advice and insights. This may be our last question, maybe, depending on how much time we have left, but want to make sure we have time for this one. What makes you most excited about the future of women in philanthropy and what's next? So would love to hear what you're seeing for what's next and what you're most excited about.
I'll start. I think for me, where I am and seeing the interconnectedness between women's philanthropy and family philanthropy, we are leaning into family philanthropy because that's inclusive of women taking leadership roles, but we're looking at the next gen. We have to look at that pipeline, because even though it might have a really long tail, they are the future of the organization. So starting with women and building into that next gen is a really important target market for us. And it's authentic, it's real, it's where we want to meet them where they are. And so I appreciate every single woman donor that we have that steps up and tells us how it is, what we've done wrong, what we should change, all of it. And when they trust you, they will be honest and they will tell you what you've done wrong. And that's a good thing.
I'll jump
Diane?
in. So in this dynamic moment, when there's a lot of cultural shift that's happening in our country, and people are saying, oh my gosh, democracy is at threat. The thing that keeps me really excited is that women are still coming together just like they were 200, 300 years ago to solve problems. If we are concerned that democracy is at threat in our country writ large, women are still finding ways to express their voice, to raise their voices, and get stuff done. And that's what's keeping me excited.
Shauna, Candy?
Yeah,
Go
I'll
ahead.
take a stab at it. I think what excites me most about the future of women's philanthropy is that we are witnessing this fundamental shift in how power, purpose, and participation are defined. And we are no longer being asked to fit into these traditional models of giving that I referenced earlier. We are reshaping philanthropy itself and where the world is right now. We have to be more inclusive and relational and community driven. And when we have the chance to move donors to be architects of change, we get to share lived experiences and are all valued equally. So philanthropy can be, it can level set things. And if we continue to give to the things that we know are important that are being overlooked, we could be those change makers.
Shauna, I'll turn it over to you for your thoughts.
Sure. Listen, all of that. I am excited that women are getting wealthier. Economic power is the key to liberation, right? Period. So we know where money needs to go. We know how, I think this investment in the next gen is super crucial. And should be built in now, and taking a very long view on outcomes is really going to be really important to that, but it's essential. And I think we know where it needs to go. I think we know where to put the money. I think we have the vehicles for moving the money, and now it's about scaling up our existing efforts. And I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, thank you. I have one final question because you all are so incredibly brilliant. This has been incredibly insightful. I am walking away with a lot. In fact, we'll be sharing with my team shortly as well. But in a sentence or two, what is the biggest takeaway you want everyone to leave with? And I'll start with Candy. I'll kick it over to you to drop a few nuggets,
Sure.
and then go to the rest of the group.
Thank you. I think my biggest takeaway is I want to leave where I started, which is when we see the unseen, when we truly and authentically listen and include women and other donors as problem solvers and leaders, and we build those relational and transformational trust with them, we're not just raising money, we're raising possibility. And when everyone has a seat at the table, our job is done. We're creating open spaces, trust, and community where that can happen. So see the unseen.
Thank you. Shauna?
Sorry about that. Was on mute. I would say engage women donors as full partners, establish it, not just as a value, but a systemic and strategic imperative. I might be getting ahead of the success of, of anybody's given program on here, but don't let men off the hook when women show up in big numbers with a lot to give.
Yeah, Marie?
So I think if I could leave one thought with this group, it's that when women's voices shape philanthropy, the entire sector becomes stronger. Women are modeling a kind of giving that is strategic, patient, and inclusive. Giving that looks not just at immediate outcomes, but at structural transformation. And increasingly, women are showing us that the most powerful philanthropy is rooted in relationships, equity, and shared purpose.
Thank you. And Diane?
2 thoughts, 2 sentences. Ask, don't assume, and one woman, one woman.
Thank you. I couldn't have said it better myself. Really, a lot of thanks, praise, gratitude to Marie, to Candy, to Diane, to Shauna, and to Michelle and Travis for putting together such an incredibly thoughtful session, timely, important, the data, the heart, and the rigor. That's what I really walk away with. And the moment that we are in. Thank you everyone for joining us. It has been our pleasure to hold space for all of you to learn more and to connect with our panelists. We really appreciate your time. You could have been anywhere and you made the choice to be here with us today. Thank you everyone, and please have a great rest of the day.